Yeah, that was really shitty. So here we go. What's up, heathens and demons? Make sure your live stream is muted or that will happen. But welcome back to The Rage. I got Richard Mattson here. It's been quite a long time since we've had a one-on-one. I failed to get his link in the description below, so I'm going to let him plug his channel. And if you're interested in subscribing to him, please do. He's got great content, and I will make sure that link is in the description after the show. What's up, audience? What's up, Richard?
Peace and respect to you all, and in the side chat as well. How you doing, boss? Yeah, I got a little YouTube channel. It's not going very far, very fast, but that's what you get if you argue with everybody. So there you go.
Yeah, I've been finding that out myself, and I forgot to turn my AC off, so I'm gonna have to do that. But yeah, like you know, my growth has started to pick back up. But yeah, I think when you argue and you try to be fair, especially if you're known as a raging atheist, when you try to be fair, people are like, eh.
You know, I like the original Rage. I like what you were doing in the first place, man. I thought this guy's really being himself. This guy's being genuine, and you know, and I admire that. You weren't just being trendy. You weren't just like trying to follow the crowd. You were saying what you thought, and that's important.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and that's what I'm really trying to get back to is just feel free again to have my sense of humor like I used to. I just filmed a video. It's called questions that girls are afraid to ask guys, and it's Paul and Morgan, and that's what they're doing on their channel now. But instead of Paul answering the questions, I answer the questions, and I think I have fun with it, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to offend some. So
I hope so. Yeah, you know, now that I'm not a sexually active being anymore, I like to just tell people the truth about how it really was back when I just lied all the time to get what I wanted and etc. I'll just spit it, you know, I don't care.
Yeah, me too. And I don't run away from my past, and yeah, I talk about that too. How in my 20s, you know, back then we called ourselves players because we thought we were playing the field. I don't know what the young folks call it now. But yeah, I talk about it, and I've never ran away from it, and I try not to run away from my past, and I think that that's important because if you try to be something you're not, I think people pick up on it. And I think for the last 8 months, I've really tried to be something that I'm not, and people picked up on it.
True story. True. Yeah, we have an intrinsic feeling about honesty, and maybe we can't prove it, but that doesn't really matter. It still affects us. We still know something is wrong.
Yeah, and I think people picked up on it, but we're getting back to normal. John's back on all the time, and his show Apostate Alliance has just been brilliant. If you guys aren't checking that out, you really should. You know, we're working out the kinks. Like we had some kinks today because they pre-recorded it, and I'm sitting here trying to you know run the share screen live instead of spend hours upon hours last night editing it and making it a premiere. And so, yeah, we're working out kinks, but at the same time, it's a great show, and it's great guests that people you might not have seen or you might not know what it's like for Muslims coming out of Islam. So I think it's a different kind of show, and all of y'all should be checking it out because it's been very interesting.
Now, is Faye the most gracious on every episode, or I mean, I haven't caught them all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, she's been on every one except for one, and that was the Godless Girl one. She couldn't make it for that, so I wasn't prepared to interview Godless Girl during that stream, but I still think it went well, that we got what we wanted out of it. But yeah, that's the only one she hasn't been on. And then she commented that in the comment section of that video, like, see what happens when I miss a show. So, but of course it's Godless Girl, so it did get a little heated. She got a little heated with the audience. But today Richard's here because a few days ago, probably about a week ago, I had a live stream where I first covered Nate and Sutton, and I was trying to get back to my obnoxious self, I guess, and I did make some statements that Richard took some disagreement with. So we're going to talk about that, and then if you guys later on in the show, if you want to become a part of it, any questions for me or Richard, then feel free to ask. I've got it on 2 screens, so hopefully I won't miss your questions, and we'll get it on the screen and try to address it.
And yeah, if you guys tag me by name, or that would help Naka and I to spot it, because it becomes highlighted, of course. And welcome Maynard Saves and Iron Charioteer, Lisa for Truth, and Tioga.
Yeah, welcome all the audience members. Thanks for joining us on this Father's Day. So we kind of thought it might be a little light because of Father's Day, but hopefully more will join. And again, if you guys have any questions, tag me or Richard, and we will try to get that on the screen.
So that's how I met you. That's how I met Skylar Fiction and several others. Is when you guys would say something that I really thought that I could show wasn't necessarily true. That's what started all these conversations. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to argue with you again, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't really argued in a while. And this should be an interesting conversation, because you have certain takes, and then I'm going to have certain takes, and we'll probably neither one of us really provide much citation. We'll see, though.
I'm not sure who said this, and this is a loose quote, but it was something like a truly brilliant person will accept argumentation. A person who's average will accept evidence, and someone who's well below average will accept neither. You know? So
I agree.
I don't think we should. I mean, we're not having a formal debate. We shouldn't have to produce citations in order to make our point. We should be able to make our point in logic and just consider it in that way. And I think that's what you and I both do.
Yeah. So the first thing, and I got your email up. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the word rebel thoughts.
Rebel thoughts, right.
So I'll let you give me your criticisms of me using that terminology.
Okay, well, first, I used to think of myself the same way for 30 some odd continuous years when I was an anti-theist. I thought I would have thoughts that didn't seem to indicate my own personality. You've got John's icon up there today.
Yeah, I know. I always do that. I'll be right back.
So I mean, I thought, I have thoughts that are outside of my personality type, things that I would think were just horrible things to think about people, or deep sexual thoughts about another person who maybe I didn't even know them, or thoughts about theft, or angry thoughts about hurting someone, and I didn't even need to know them or be emotionally involved with them to have those kinds of thoughts. And in retrospect, looking back at that, I know that's not who I am. I never have been that person. But I definitely had thoughts like that all the time. So I think I have a choice to be made there, and I think some people do get diagnosed because of those aspects of themselves as having some kind of disorder. And one of the ones I mentioned in my comment on his video was schizophrenia. That in order that you have thoughts that don't align to your personality, then one of the solutions to that is that you have multiple personality disorder. So it seems to me, or it did seem to me, that I was suffering maybe from some kind of mental illness or something. Of course, now that I'm a theist, I believe that there are real beings who are able to communicate through emotion, through mental imaging, through ideas directly into our heads. And that's my whole point of saying all that is, and not to create a false dichotomy, as it appears I did in that comment, that either you have split personality disorder, or maybe that you're just praying,
Yeah.
but.
Well, and so I should put it into context. Tioga points it out in the chat here. It's part of OCD psychosis, which is normal. I do have OCD, but what I'm talking about is just like rebel thoughts that I think every human being has. Maybe I'm unique in this, but like say, just to use an example, like say it's been a very long time since I've had any sexual activity, right? So like a rebel thought might come into my head about sex, and I didn't trigger that thought. I didn't intentionally think of that thought to come. It just comes, and
Sure.
it'll be there, and I'll usually just push it away, stuff like that. So like, and like the actual terminology, I pretty much just made up on a spot. I take a lot of poetic license with my dialogue.
I thought it was pretty good,
Some people
actually.
give me shit about it, Dr. Brian Oblivion. But it's just the way that I've always been kind of a poet, so I've always taken some poetic liberties with my dialogue. I tried to look it up, and there's not even a definition for the word rebel thought. So
Well, there is starting right now.
yeah, starting right now. So what I meant by that is that human beings just have thoughts that they're not intentionally trying to conjure up in their minds, and I think it's a very normal thing, and I think probably most human beings go through that.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I gave a couple examples. I could give a million more of where I didn't want to have a thought, but I'd had it anyway. Now I have a choice at that point. I can entertain the thought. I can encourage the thought or idea. I can dismiss it. I can be disgusted by it and certain ideas at certain times. And there's a lot of things in my life, pictures in my head of things that I have seen or people have shown me that I'd rather do without, frankly. I'd rather not have those pictures. Some of that because I was in the military and around military people, and some of that because I was in the military. So certainly there's things that come to my mind that I don't want any part of, but then I have to ask myself the question, am I just self-deprecating? Do I just want to be unhappy? Do I want to think poor things about myself? Do I want to think terrible things about others? And I think the answer is no, I don't want those things.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that happens to me because I'm usually a very confident person, and I for the last few weeks I've talked about it on Twitter. I've talked about it maybe in a couple streams. I went through a fairly depressive state, to the point to where I didn't want to make response videos anymore, and I started to doubt what I'm doing here, and if I even wanted to do it at all anymore. And it's just totally not in my character, because I love doing this. I love the conversations. I love the process of editing videos. But yeah, it's not something that I could have really controlled. I couldn't make those things go away. I just pretty much had to write it out. I started to feel better naturally. And today I'm in a better spot than I was even a few days ago when I made my burnout stream, because I was like really super burned out when I made that stream. And today I haven't really felt like that. And like I said, I was able to really get in and do some editing work. So I think, Tioga pointed it out in the chat. I think a better term for it is intrusive thoughts, to where these thoughts just come unbidden. And I think it's just something that we as human beings in this human experience tend to struggle with. And we try to make ourselves better than what we were before. But just even with that attempt and that active attempt to do that on a daily basis, doesn't mean you're going to get rid of the thoughts that you had before. That takes a lot longer.
True story. So like if I say large gray, generally gray colored animal with sparse hair, a long rope like tail, and a snake like nose with two giant teeth sticking out the front of it and big floppy ears. Now you didn't ask me to do that. I just did it, But will you have a picture of an elephant? Well, if you don't, I don't know why. Okay? So it is true that me as an intelligent or you as an intelligent can force yourself on me and put an idea into my head that I just didn't ask for. Now, on the flip side of the same coin, it doesn't make any sense to me that I would want to have thoughts that I don't want to have. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work well for me. So I think when something comes to me that is against my personality, my moral alignment, the things I'm interested in, or historically something I have studied or known of or been introduced to, when it's outside of that possibility of range of things that I normally, because I know me, and it's like, that's a pretty girl, I want a cheeseburger, gee, I'm tired. and stuff like that. I mean, I know me and things I'm interested in. So when it's outside of what seems historically to be me, I have to wonder if it is me.
Hmm. Yeah. Totally alien thoughts. Yeah, they that happens rarely for me, but it has happened. So like, thoughts that are just completely outside of my character, does tend to happen. I would say probably more in my dreams and my subconscious level than when I'm conscious and I'm awake. But like, I will still get, quite often, based upon my past, I get a certain reaction if I feel disrespected by a male. So, and if it's in real life and we're face to face, even though I've been nonviolent for 25 years now, however long it's been, probably about 20 years to be more accurate. If I am disrespected by a man, by what I would call like an alpha male type or whatever. I don't really believe in the alpha ideology, but just that really, big man, because there's got to be a big man for me to have this reaction, because I'm a big man. But I will get that thought in my head that I'm going to beat this dude's ass, and I will see it in my head, and it's totally not who I am anymore. I haven't been that person in 2 decades, and yet I'll still get the thoughts unbidden coming to my mind. And yeah, I don't want to have those thoughts. I am thinking them though, and once you recognize you're thinking them, then you are in control of those thoughts. But I can't control the fact that image of me stomping that motherfucker comes to my mind, just because that was a part of who I was. It's how I was raised. Like, I think I've talked about it in stream before. Down in North Carolina, me and my friends, we would get drunk and we would play this game called Splat, where we'd go out into the front yard and beat the shit out of each other. Last man standing wins. And that was just being friends, no animosity whatsoever. So it was just how I was raised. And if I feel disrespected, I immediately go there like, I will beat your ass, even though I won't, because I'm completely nonviolent now.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's something to be said about hormones in teenagers, and why we did things like that. And no, it's not necessarily part of the way I think today. Although, yeah, I did stupid stuff too when I was a teenager. Not that ended with adulthood. Not at all. I still did stupid things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I was, let me think. I was probably 24 when I got my last fight. My last real physical altercation with another human being. But there's been plenty of times since then that the only reason it didn't happen is because they didn't take it to that level, because I was sitting there talking shit, ready to go. So, yeah, I mean, it took me a long time to get out of that. And then, I became this completely non-violent person to the point to where I don't believe in guns. I don't believe, in having weapons. I don't believe in any violence at all. And that's been like with what's going on with the protests. That's been the one thing that's really kind of had me questioning, all right, what do I really feel about these protests? Can I support the more violent aspects of it? And I had to really think about it for a long time before I said, hey, sometimes violence is necessary. And when it comes to these protests, I don't agree with some of the things that's happening. But when it comes to like burning down power structures, burning down the police precinct, yeah, I fucking agreed with that. And it does go against that nonviolent attitude that I've tried to maintain for like really strictly for the last decade. It got to a point, I'm such a big dude that I will hurt somebody, and I don't want to hurt people. So for the last 10 years, it's been really something that I have really focused on. No violence. I don't even spank my daughter, no violence whatsoever.
Yeah. If you go back to LA, probably about between 40 and 60 years ago, when it was a regular occurrence for police to show up at a gay bar in force and just beat the crap out of everyone who was there and anyone who made a fuss who wasn't homosexual, and sometimes kill people. When you have that kind of violence being exercised on a super small minority like that, I mean, there's all the peaceful protests that were done and are done today, and I do not advocate violence, but I can certainly understand why people are pressed to violence.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you look at you look at Colin Kaepernick taking a knee and the response he got, losing his career, and
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, I think the Chargers are going to work him out. So I think that's, one of the good things about all of this is maybe Cap will get his job back. But, he lost so much, and he was just doing a peaceful protest. And he actually went to, I believe he was a Green Beret, and the Green Beret was told him, well, take a knee, don't sit. When we're honoring our fallen soldiers, we take a knee. So he did that, and they still gave him shit. So, and you look at the peaceful protest, Black Lives Matter, 99% of their protests have always been peaceful. Now, sometimes shit gets out of hand, but
sure,
despite all of that, they're labeled as some kind of hate organization that starts all this shit with the police. No, here recently, yes, and you're right. Like, how long are you going to be nonviolent before you have to take the next step? And that's ultimately the conclusion that I came to very quickly is like, no, I'm going to support this 100% because this is the product of being ignored for decade after decade after decade.
It's just like the Black Snake prophecy and the railroad and everything else. You can do everything you can to be patient and to be kind and to be nonviolent. And ultimately what that means, you're not going to get what you need. That's ultimately what it means. And it's sad that our government and governments around the world haven't learned by now that if they can't concede when it's reasonable, then they're going to have to concede when it's not.
Yeah, and and we'll see what comes of this. Hopefully, great change comes, great reform. I'm probably going to be doing a stream fairly soon, just concentrating on that, even though I'm trying to leave politics off the channel now. I think that this transcends politics. This isn't about politics. This is about society. And so I think that, I'll always speak to what's going on in society on this channel. So it's something that I really need to cover and update and talk about a little more in depth than I have. So yeah, I think on the Rebel Thoughts thing, it was just probably a miscommunication. You were saying one thing and I was saying another thing, and we were trying to use the same terminology.
No, I totally got what you were saying. I wanted to provoke you and get on your show because I love you. I miss you, man.
Well, it worked. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's been too long since we've done these one-on-ones. I know the next time you come on, we're going to really have to delve back into your beliefs, because I know this one guy came on recently and started talking about seeing Jesus as prophetically, like Jesus didn't exist. And that he will exist in the future. So, and I know that you kind of have a lot of those same thoughts. So I want to have a conversation about that in the near future with you, because maybe you and this one guy versus me on that issue.
No chance at all. This one guy is brilliant, but highly disorganized.
Oh yeah. I agree.
I don't want him sitting beside me talking. I don't. I mean, I love the guy. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I'm down with that too. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
he was the one that brought it up in that "Does Jesus Exist" stream.
Oh, by the way, his little group of praiseites really read him the riot act for that and gave him a really hard time for I think more than a week, actually.
Really?
For having said that on your show. Yeah. They chewed him up, and
he wasn't even on for very long. He was on for about maybe 20 minutes, and he had to dip out.
Right. There is actual, outside of doctrinal views of the text, and I can justify this statement, there's logical necessities from within the text that make me say the things that I do about the text without ignoring parts of it. And I know that can be a little bit of a tedious conversation, but it's actually true. That when Christians say things like Christ hung on the cross, was dead 3.5 days, raised from the dead 2,000 years ago-ish, when they say things like that, they're ignoring parts of the text that don't allow them to say that. And I would have that conversation with anyone, just by the way. Yeah, as far as the Rebel Thoughts are concerned, and I understand that this is a belief that I have in my life. It's actually extremely difficult to show. but in an internal critique from within the Christian text, it's obvious to me this line of logic follows. In the text, God doesn't accept and believe lies, so God would reject lies. That Satan is the accuser of man, which is a lie. He's lying about mankind. But that leaves you the position where who would listen to the lies of Satan? And Christians don't do this calculation. They do not think about that and go, wait a minute, Satan's been lying to me personally. Which means that he is performing the same kind of communication with you that God does. Which is how you can have Christians say horrible things. Because they think they're God. Well, I think many of them don't differentiate between the negative forces in prayer and the positive forces in prayer. And because of that, you get things like Matt Powell.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where we're going to really diverge on what we think, because I don't believe in Satan nor God.
Right.
So I don't think that any thoughts that you are getting are coming from either one of them.
Sure.
But at the same time, I've often wondered that, like, how can Christians be certain that they're not hearing the voice of Satan as opposed to the voice of God? Because we all know, like, according to the story, Satan is here on earth, God isn't. Satan rules this earth. He fell here. He has been given pretty much command of it. Even Christians will tell you that he's pulling the strings of humanity and that he's attacking every human at the same time. And I'm like, well, if he has that much power here, wouldn't it logically follow that being would corrupt your faith in the higher power and try to make you believe things that God wouldn't want you to believe, like take homosexuality.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be Satan telling you need to go out and kill these people instead of loving all of your God's creation? So and they don't seem to even be able to pick up on that logic. Oh, it's not possible because I'm a Christian, I would know better.
What?
I'm like, no, yeah, like, how would you know better? Like,
apparently not true.
This being would be far higher than you if it exists. So how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's just be really practical. When it comes to human prosperity and social structures, murdering people is not good. Period. Okay, yeah. So how can a Christian say, my benevolent God, who is perfectly good, recommends murdering people?
Or even, like, and that's another thing that they can't seem to pick up on. This God is supposed to be perfect. This God is supposed to know all the future, the past, and the present. And yet, he's going to create homosexuality in order
and then condemn it.
Yeah, in order for human beings to have something to kill. It doesn't make any sense. And if you look at what's going on in Uganda right now, evangelicals would be having a wet dream because pretty much American evangelicals have caused a situation there to where they are passing legislation to kill gay people. It's really, really scary.
Boy.
Really, really scary. I'm planning on doing a video about it.
Now, heterosexuals who don't understand this at a personal level often disagree with what I'm about to say. And Christians who don't really read the Bible often disagree with what I'm about to say. But in Matthew 19:10 through 12, and Marty has backed me up on this, and every homosexual or bisexual I've ever spoke to has backed me up on this, that there are three ways that a person is homosexual or bisexual. They were either A, they were born that way, or B, they were influenced by others, or C, for personal preference, made the choice. Now that covers it. And I've never said it, and I heard anyone say, oh, you left out D. And as far as I know, there is no D. Okay? And when the 12 apostles ask of Christ and say, if a man is like a woman, well, that's not even an important question. If it just means homosexuality in a time, or if it meant eunuchs in a time when eunuchs were common and needed no special exceptions. And there were already laws about eunuchs and what they did and didn't do in society. So there's no point in asking the question, if a man is like a woman, is it good that he should marry? That doesn't even make sense in the time frame, and then he doesn't answer the question. Then he moves on to the next larger echelon of topic and says some are born of the womb, eunuchs, using the word eunuch, which would have been an accurate way in the colloquial sense to say homosexual at the time. Some eunuchs are born of the womb. Some are made eunuchs by others. That's not true of eunuchs either. I mean, most eunuchs are not born of the womb, nor made by others. They had surgeons. And some yet choose to be, but for the kingdom of God's sake, if someone can receive the good news, let them. So, I mean, to me, that's a quote in the Bible about the Bible, saying that although it does claim that you're not really helping God by having a homosexual relationship, that it also means that you should be told of the promise of heaven. So, I mean, my choice there is either Jesus is a real jerk, teasing people, or he meant homosexuals can go to heaven. He must have meant one of the two, though.
Yeah, and we do have a question for you from the chat, and we'll get to that. I just want to, like, when you say eunuch, what I picture is somebody that involuntarily had their genitalia removed. Like back in the day, kings would make eunuchs so those eunuchs wouldn't mess with their wives. I would say that that's different than a transgender person trying to be the person that they are and making the choice to go through the surgeries that they're going through.
It is different, but homosexual is a relatively new word. Transgender is a new word. They didn't have that word to express it. So they used words that they had, of course. Yeah,
and I would agree with that. So Jake 4D in the chat says, if I'm thinking of the right person, last time I saw a stream with Demolish, he said he does not go back and read the Bible a second time. Is that still true?
Yeah, other than looking up all the individual words from David and Goliath, and just for that one paper. If I did another paper, I guess I'd have to go and look at each individual word again. No, I don't go back and read it a second time. And if you will take the time and trouble to find where I have misquoted the Bible anywhere, as far as me understanding what is and is not in that text, you're welcome to it. But apparently I'm some kind of an idiot savant, and the whole Bible is in my head. I don't have a choice. I don't need to go. I mean, if you need to read something twice, please do. But I don't need to read it a second time.
I'm actually reading it for the 10th time, very slowly, making chapter by chapter, making videos about it. I plan on going through the whole Bible doing that. It'll be my 10th time as far as I can remember. It might actually be more. I always settled on the number 9 as how many times I read the Bible, because I always felt like that was probably a low-end answer, because I probably read it like 12 times. But I say 9 just to be accurate, so I'm not overestimating it. I still think 9 is probably a high number, even for most Christians.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's unusual for someone to read it as much as you have.
Oh, and I'm like that with every book. Like I've read The Wheel of Time, and that's I think a 12 or 13 book series, and every book is huge. I've read that series like 6 times. Like Lord of the Rings. I've probably read that like 15 times.
Now, I've never been personally interested in reading for entertainment. In fact, the only things I've read in my life were technical manuals. And like, my brain likes things like how to tear down a transmission read from a Chilton's manual. I like stuff like that, and every time I've tried to read something that I thought was bull crap, I can't remember it later very well, So to me, the Bible is not fiction at all. It seems very, very real to me. It's so much so it's like an experience that I've had. And it's just like if I ask you, you remember that time you went fishing in that lake and you fell in and this series of stuff, you're going to remember that happening. And there's no point. You don't have to go jump back in the water while wearing waders so that you can continue to remember it. It's not like that.
Yeah. And you definitely have different interpretations of what the Bible says. We've gotten into it a little bit, and we'll definitely get into that in another stream, because I find your take to be fascinating. I disagree with pretty much everything you say when it comes to the Bible, but at the same time, I think that it's refreshing, because you just don't get that take from too many people. A, but B, I don't find it harmful. The Bible hasn't been a tool for you to other people.
No.
It's a tool for you, if anything, to accept other people. And so I have no issue. Like to me, there's just no issues with the way that you interpret the Bible.
For me, the way I read it, and I know that others don't necessarily read it this way, and they say terrible things about other humans and groups, and they're othering all the time. I understand that. Sorry, I get a little choked up thinking about how terrible they are. For me, in the reading frame I've adopted about it, leaving no part of it out, and taking it actually more literally than what I see Christians taking it from its original words, definitions, and intent, causes me to believe that what it's talking about is equality and love and knowledge and acceptance of others. It's not talking about othering anyone. But I think because of personal pride and tribalism, people read it that way, and because they want to or need to, and then they justify, I don't know, name your social issue. But those are things they normally would try to justify somewhere anyway because they're unjust.
Well, yeah, and I think it's something that humans just naturally do in all things. We do it in politics. We do it in our social groups.
Sure.
And I think it's a very human thing to do, and I think it's why I try to go out of my way to kind of go against that. I had a Mormon that just recently followed me on Twitter because he was interested in No Dapple and had questions about it. And I was reading his name and thinking, all right, this is a skeptic. He's an atheist. So I was talking to him like an atheist. And he said something that I really agreed with. And he was like, wait a minute, brother, you might want to realize I'm a true believing Mormon before you go and agree with me. And I'm like, I don't play team sports. If you say something I'm going to agree with, I'm going to agree with you. And then if you say something I disagree with, trust me, you're going to know that.
Yeah, it's not like you're shy or something.
Yeah, no. I don't hold back,
Right on. And that's something I've always appreciated about you. You've always found unless the other person's being disrespectful to you, you've always found a respectful way to say what you really think and feel. I try. And that's hard for us. It's really hard.
I try. I have failed in some situations, not too often here on the channel in life. I have failed at that sometimes, but I really do try to give what's given. So if you're going to come in and be disrespectful, if you're going to be racist, like John Grishala was, or if you're going to come in and try to trigger me, I'm going to let you. And you're probably not going to like the results of what happens. The thing that I can think of right offhand was when the Black Hebrew Israelite came on, and Dragnot was on the show and having a really good conversation with him. And the Black Hebrew Israelite, when I brought up that I was part Native American, and does that make me one of the true Jews, immediately went into racism. Oh, you're a $5 Indian. You're just a white dude. And it triggered the fuck out of me. We were having a really good conversation up to that point. The moment he did that, it was over with. And I exploded. It's probably going to be a part of my next I Do Rage video, because people said I was too soft. I'm like, that was the very beginning. Those are my first streams. Just wait, because the rage is coming. And he's the one that I really think of and regret that I raged and kicked him out of the stream, because up to that point we were having a really good solid conversation, mainly between him and Dragnot, and because he triggered me, I let it get out of control and lost out on probably the second half of a great conversation.
I have to say I missed that one. What was it he was upset about? Because you're part Native American? Well, is that why?
The Black Hebrew Israelite position is that the Lost Tribes of Israel mainly migrated to Africa, but also were Native Americans. So
so he should love you more.
Yeah, so that's what I brought up. So I was like, because I'm part Cherokee, I'm 33% Cherokee. Does that make me 33% of the Lost Tribes of Israel?
Yes, it does.
But to him, it was like, nope, you're a white dude.
Now the problem is you look too white. You look too white for him, so it's about what you look like. Actually.
Exactly.
Okay, so then he's inconsistent in his own view.
And I probably triggered him by pointing out that there's no fucking way that the Native Americans were the Lost Tribe of Israel, because Native Americans have, I think it's a 6,000 year history here on this continent, ever since they crossed the land bridge. So I mean, they were not the Lost Tribes of Israel. So I mean, for you to you can make you can actually make a pretty good historical claim that the lost tribes of Israel landed in Africa. You can't say that about the Native Americans.
Peace and respect. Will Kincaid and Red Fang are both here now.
Hey, what's up, Will and Red Fang? I have started to see some older viewers coming back, and I'm really appreciative of that. And it shows me that I'm heading back in the right direction.
Right on. Right on.
So let's get back to your criticisms of that stream, because it was the first time I ever covered Nate and Sutton. I mentioned it in the stream. I find them to be really boring. They're the type of Christians that I like Christian content where they talk about Christianity, and I can really kind of go through and respond, and I'm responding to Christianity. With them, a lot of it's my life shit. A lot of Christians do it, like I'm raising a baby now, and how do I put on my makeup? And I'm like, I don't care. So it really bores me. And then I
like finally, everybody else.
Yeah, like you're normal. But with this video, they said things that I intentionally kind of allowed me to trigger me so I could respond in my old way. And I know you took issue with me saying it's not a two-way conversation if God is not right there. And I try to clarify it a little bit. Like, you don't have to be right next to me on the couch or whatever. Sure. It could be like a two-way conversation through email, through phone. But there has to be a real person there to have a conversation with you, and it has to actually be a real dialogue, was my point. And you took you did take some issue with that, because naturally, as a Christian, you probably feel like you do have two-way conversations with God.
Well, we do have two-way conversations that are remote. For instance, you could do a video over the internet like we are now. Okay? So, I mean, the entire idea of having a remote conversation, although new in the history of the planet, is not surprising to us today. And yes, I believe that a lot of Christians are just fooling themselves. That they're not praying and having meaningful, purposeful prayer. They don't know how to describe it actually. They don't know how to do it on purpose, and are more likely to do it by accident and get falsehoods than they are reality. They're much more likely to make something up and confirm their own belief systems that they already presupposed, and problems like that. However, I think there's a necessity that if I mean, by the strictest definitions of what communication and information are, if you say something to me that I could not have been aware of, let's say you said, for instance, your car is black, right? And I go, okay, Naka said his car is black. Now, I know his address, so I'm going to use Google Earth. I'm going to look in his driveway and see if his car is black, okay? So if you say that to me before I go and look at Google Earth, right? And I go, I now know that or at least I believe that. I think there's a possibility that Naka's car is black. So I go and I confirm it from outside of myself, and it is black, okay? And let's say it was a super specific thing, not just a black car. But say it was super, super specific. I don't think I invented that information if it's true in reality. And I couldn't have known it without someone else saying it to me. Like, you'd have to tell me your address. I'd have to know that Google Earth existed. All these necessities to get to the information. So if something from outside of my experience range is shared with me, and I test it against reality, and it's real, then I think I had communication.
Well, and so make sure my mic is on. So, the difference between that and God, though, is for one, I'm a real person, and you would have that tool to Google my apartment building, see that parking lot, and see that my car is actually silver, but tomato. But
whatever.
But with God, say if God reveals something and you didn't know you knew it, but you find out that what came into your head was true. My point, and this is another thing you took issue with in the stream, was we have a lifetime of picking up information, and we're not always conscious of that information. We have a lifetime of watching TV shows, and we don't remember every single TV show we have. So there is subconscious information that is stored in our brain that, with the right trigger, could be brought forth, and you might not realize that you learned that information. But it doesn't mean that voice in your head was God giving you information you didn't know. It was something triggered that brain stimuli to pull that memory from you. Like, for instance, I learned a lot of stuff about dinosaurs when I was like in the 4th grade, and I went to this museum for this for the special class in school, and I still will pull that information out of my brain. And it would seem like I haven't studied dinosaurs in years upon years. How would I know this information? And yet, like, I know that I went to that museum. I know that I picked up a lot of information that I just wasn't consciously aware of.
Wait, you're defeating your own statement there, Naka. You're saying I pick up information from my memory, and I don't always know where it came from, and then you stated exactly in your examples where it came from.
In my example, I gave you where it came from, but it could come from like a TV show that you just don't remember watching, or something that a person said that you don't remember hearing that conversation, and then the stimuli that's surrounding the event in the present is triggering that information to be brought forth from your brain.
Right. Which is why, in my example, I gave something very, very small and technical that you wouldn't find on the news or in a book. The color of car of Naka is not in a book somewhere that I can look it up. And I'd have to probably be part of the Department of Transportation in your local area to be even able to find, or police or something, to find that out. I just can't find it out. So yeah, I mean, I can look up a lot of stuff, or there's a lot of stuff that's on TV, that I could have learned about very, very casually, but it wouldn't be small, specific things that, like, nobody knows about. It would be like general knowledge stuff. Like, lots of people would know about it. Cryptomnesia is the name for that.
Yeah, I never heard of that before. I knew that there was a name for it, and I should have probably looked it up. But yeah, Steven Sorensen said cryptomnesia. I can't even say it right. I'm not smart enough to say it right.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. That tells me that I am not seeing everybody in the chat, because I don't even see that comment in the chat. But anyway, it's a darn top chat in life. Why is there two different kinds? Just give me something that works.
Well, and I don't like. Yeah, the guest chat is different than the host chat, because like I see all the comments, and yet as a guest, it's completely different when I'm a guest on a StreamYard. That's something StreamYard really needs to fix.
Yeah, they suck at that. They do. You don't have half the comments, not even close. Especially if it seems busy. Okay.
Crypto-amnesia. Crypto-amnesia. That's how you say it.
Crypto-amnesia. Crypto-amnesia. It kind of makes sense in those words, I guess. Okay, so the defeater to that, of course, would be information that none of us have. Because there's no way for me to experience information not on the planet from normal methods. So I can't justify knowing something that we don't know, and it be true in reality. And I just can't do that. I can't be remembering it. If it's true in reality, I can't be making it up. If it's exceedingly unlikely to happen, then it's way beyond guessing. You can't just guess things that are an astronomically slim chance of happening. You can't just guess stuff like that. So
and I know with you, like, you have a very specific example to where you feel like you was given revelation about planets and star systems that you didn't know about before.
Right. So and the only thing that's been new knowledge that wasn't known to the planet that I am aware of, that's within the Christian text, Old Testament, is a prediction of a meteor. I'm sorry, meteor is the wrong word. A comet, and it doesn't say comet, but an object that, from our perspective, for a continuous, fairly decent, noticeable amount of time, not like a flash or something, will block our views from our perspective of a certain part of a certain constellation. So that is something that I see spelled out in the text, and people, they can argue with it. but within the reading frame, it's consistent. And that is something that has been there for thousands of years, that writing there. And we discovered it literally in 2017. And yes, it's the first time and only time that this can, and will happen, because the extreme unlikelihood of any such thing ever happening. So, I mean, I can't just make up something like that and it'll be true. And I think no one can.
Well, yeah, and I would agree. And I'm not even trying to, because I do grant the possibility of a God. And I don't think that it's the Christian God or even the God in the Bible, but there could be some universal mind out there. I don't know. We can't see beyond the expansion when it comes to the Big Bang. There could have been some entity pulling that trigger, like the old Looney Tunes cartoons. They always had the demolition box with the DNT on it, and you push that lever down, and you would have an explosion. Who knows? Maybe God pushed that lever. I don't know, and I don't pretend to. So I'm not. Right. I do think that if a God were to exist, and he did take an interest in human affairs, which I think is another huge problem, because why would a master of the universe care about this little peon of a planet and the apes that are on top of it?
That's a really good point.
But if he did, then such a being would have the ability to communicate with our minds. So I'm not even trying to take that away. I'm just trying to say that my main point with that is, while that might be true, it is unverifiable, and there's really no way, at least with the technology that we have today, that we could ever verify that that's the truth. And we do have alternative explanations like crypto amnesia, that could explain how this phenomena happens. Now, in your particular case, you knew this before it was discovered in 2017. I think that would give you personal grounds to believe in what you believe in. But
for me, it's super compelling.
Yeah, but for me, it's not.
Right.
And I think you understand that.
Sure. I mean, that it's not for meanness and punishment that in the Bible it's saying that our ancient ancestors will perform a series of events that we will recognize from ancient religions. It's not about punishment or torture. It's about exposing to us that they've been intending to do this, that they've always told us they intended to do this, and then we'll know that they're doing it because it's actually happening. Which is it's not prophecy per se if it involves intelligent interference. It's not magic. It's not magic. I could say, oh, that Richard guy's going to drink from his coffee cup, and then I drink from the coffee cup, and I go, well, gosh, I did that. That's not magic. So that's what's being spelled out in the stories, is not magic. Oh, and speaking of magic and outside the universe and God and stuff like that, those are doctrinal claims from within Christian sects, and not all of them. That God is a unembodied mind from outside of the universe, making all things in the universe, when the claim of the text is, I made all things right here where it's important to you. And that's the only claim. So as far as like other intelligences not being visually obvious to us, that's so easy to perform, it's stupid. The only way that we find far, solid, not bright, stellar objects is if they're repeating a shadow pattern around a star. That's the only way we find. We can't see them. So the amount of huge objects that are out there that can't be seen is literally innumerable. So to hide something that is approximately the size of our planet, which is a relatively small planet, and a series of smaller objects being intelligently steered through space is no trick at all why we can't find it. I don't find that surprising.
Well, yeah, and I've done videos on the Fermi paradox, and
sure,
just because we don't see alien civilization out there doesn't mean that there isn't. I don't know where I stand when it comes to alien civilizations, things like that. We've had this conversation before.
Sure.
I think there is a new study out that's saying that scientists are estimating up to 36 intelligent civilizations just in our galaxy, So, if that's true, and some of these civilizations are more advanced technologically or mentally than we are, then how would any Christian know that what they're getting is messages um, from a divine creator of the universe and not just some advanced civilization that has a way to tap into our mentalities?
Well, sure, but what you just said is how they know the difference between God and Satan. I mean, the label Satan just means an alien. It just means an alien who doesn't give a crap about you.
Well, yeah, and I've always said that about God. I mean, by the definition, God wasn't born on Earth. God would be alien.
Sure, and if God says an innumerable amount of angels show up in the sky and descend upon the mountains, and there's so many of them they literally cover the mountains to where you can't see the dirt underneath their feet anymore, by definition, that's an alien invasion. It's just an alien invasion of ancient humans instead of ancient aliens.
Well, yeah, and that's always been, I think, your position is humans came from the stars to this planet, right?
I think the reason we see samples of a evolution process is because samples were put here, and so I have no trouble saying, oh, like you'll never hear me complain about the gaps in the fossil record, because I think that's totally appropriate. There should be those, because I think that evolution happened somewhere at some time, and I don't know where, how long ago. And we see evidences of changes within, genetic mutation and increases in complexity due to mutation, selected for by environment in the evolutionary model. In our actual genetic material, we actually see it. It's really there. And I don't find that argumentative at all, actually, but would be a necessity of what the overall of what the text is saying.
Well, yeah, and in the context of the video that I was reviewing, for one, as you said, how can you tell it's not Satan? We just mentioned, like, how could you tell it's not some more advanced civilization that's closer to us and is able to tap into our mentalities? But even that, how can you know for sure it's just not your own thoughts? As I pointed out in the video, that when I'm reading a book, and I'm reading the words of Muad'Dib, if anybody's ever read Dune. Yeah, I don't hear my voice as Paul Atreides. I hear the voice my mind gives to Paul Atreides, and it's a different voice with a different accent. So like, how do Christians know that this just isn't the way the brain works? And I think we know that the brain works. Like, I can literally have thoughts. I could set my mind to having a Mexican accent, and I'm going to hear in my mind a Mexican accent if I want to, So, and in regards to that video, my main issue wasn't the fact that they were trying to say they were receiving this two-way conversation with God, or even that God was tapping into their brains, is that they were directly causing stimuli, as my computer loves to go off when I'm live, that they were physically causing stimuli. So they were starting this meditation process, but then they were bringing the image of Jesus to their minds and hearing his voice. And I'm like, your brain is functioning at that point. Your brain is doing what the brain does, and you're just saying that it's God. When I was a Christian, I never really had that experience. And it's one of the things that really caused a lot of doubt in me, because everybody would talk about talking to God and having the voice of God in their head. And that never happened to me. I would pray. I would think that I was doing what God wanted me to do. A lot of times I didn't think that I was doing what God wanted me to do, but I never had that feeling like, oh, this being is taking over my mind, and these aren't my thoughts. I always kind of knew that they were my thoughts.
Sure. It's easy to justify things like that in our experience, and we have explanations. We have explanations for everything we observe. And that makes sense. Well, there's a few things we don't have explanations for yet, but most things we have explanation for. So is there a scientific explanation for the human being experiencing the subconscious? Of course there is. Oh my gosh, how could you leave that out? Is it absolutely necessarily true that our description of the subconscious is what the subconscious is. Well, it depends on how you look at it and how you think about it. After all, if I say that the subconscious, which in a brain scan, you can locate my consciousness. You can locate my thoughts, my memories, my feelings, all the chemical interactions, all of my emotions. You can track all of that. And then there's this other aspect of me that has no physicality in the brain. And they go, well, it's an emergent property. Saying emergent property is labeling symptoms. There is no explanatory power in the words emergent property. You're just describing what you see about it. And can we find this emergent property in the physical brain? I challenge anyone. It's not there. Well, now, we can see the results of it, but we can't find it.
Well, and maybe we will someday. They've come a long ways in mapping the brain, but we still got a long ways to go in understanding the brain and all of its functions, what actually happens in there. But yeah, like I don't take away from, like, if there's a God, that it's possible that God is trying to communicate with people. But sure. At the same time, when people are open about it, or at least bragging about it, as it seemed like Nathan and Sutton were doing in that video, or a lot of YouTube Christians will tend to do, to me, it's just bluster. It's just, you're really just trying to get views and set yourself apart from the rest of Christians trying to do this. And as I pointed out quite often in that particular video, it seemed like Sutton was on board, but Nate was like, this is a little cray-cray.
Yeah, he was having a little bit of a problem with it. That's true. Yeah, of course we have biases, and of course we have explanations, and of course we have our own experiences. And it's entirely too easy for us to trick ourselves, which is why you'll never hear me say something like, oh, I feel like this is true, or it's my intuition that this is true. And the only thing that really I find convincing is information from outside of self as evidence of communication. Because I think that's the very heart and the definition of what communication is. So when they say things like, oh man, I've heard so many stupid things from, I love the Christians as well, but they say stupid things out of their confirmation bias. Not that I am without biases, of course I have them. But when you say things like,
we all have biases.
God told me that I'm right about this. Like, what? You didn't need God to tell you that. You're going to tell yourself that.
Yeah.
Or God told me I'm going to be successful in business. This is equivalent to the Sunday horoscopes. I mean, really.
Well, yeah, and going back to the conversation of the brain, like we do have instances, several instances where people will have brain injuries and they will completely lose their entire memory. They will become a completely different person and show different traits than they had before, and do different things than they had before. So, when it comes to the brain, there's a lot of mystery there. And I have been reading science on it. It does seem like we are starting to understand the brain far more than we ever have in human history. But we've still got so far to go. And I've always maintained, like, as an atheist, I'm waiting for verifiable proof. And maybe through mapping this brain, we will get that verifiable proof that there is this connection to some greater mind that links us all together. I'm totally open for that. My thing is that right now, with the technology we have, it's just unverifiable. So, I try to give credence to personal experiences like yours, personal experience with a lot of people that I've had on. I've never really taken away that from them. Like, I totally understand why that affirms your belief, but at the same time, you have to understand why me, as a skeptic or as an atheist, why that doesn't go anywhere towards affirming anything for me, because you had that personal experience.
I totally get that. But I do also like to talk about other people's personal experiences, especially for those who seem to me to have experienced God in the past and don't recognize it for what it is. And I would give an example, at least between human beings, between two. If you're old enough to remember or personally experienced, or maybe you lived in a really remote part of the United States, it's possible that you had landline phones and there were only landline phones in that area. And when we had those wire telephones at the house, and not because someone was scheduled. They called every Friday at 3:30, and you didn't need things like that. And I'll give a for instance. My baby sister, who is at least an agnostic, okay, remembers having, and we all remember her doing this. She was very emotionally attached to our next eldest sister, and she could say about 3 seconds before the phone even rang, she would go to Mom and say, "Mom, that's Susan calling." And then Mom would start walking toward the phone. It would ring. She'd pick it up and talk to Susan. Now, this happened every time Susan called without fail, because Susan, being much older, was at college. But there was no scheduled phone call. It was very erratic because you're talking about a college kid. Susan only called when something went wrong and needed Mom's help, because she's a college girl, you know. You know, that is, Mom, send me $20, or, you know, whatever. I'm failing this class. What do I do? So, not that I'm saying my sister was a big failure in school. It's just an example. But yeah, so there was no schedule for that. There was no visual cue. There was no schedule. There was no mental cues that we could identify with our current science. But it apparently happens, and it happens all the time. Most of us are aware of things like that. And then we go, there is no, and some people go, oh, quantum entanglement, and they make all kinds of fancy terms up and whatever. But the truth of it is, there's something that we haven't tested, where human beings are connected to each other, and it comes across very emotionally with some kind of information attached to it. Now, people can call that whatever they want. That's fine. Personally, I'm calling that prayer. Like, I consider it true that my sisters used to pray to each other.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I get that, but again, it's like personal. So like that would be like, you know, me and Will Kincaid making videos back and forth about each other. That's a two-way conversation, but at the same time, we're usually able to come to a place to where we can get over it, and we can come together as humans, and I can accept his faults, he can accept my faults, and we can be cool again. And I think that that's just part of humanity, right? But a lot of Christians will take that and say, well, that's just proof that God is in you, is working in you, even though you're an atheist, because you're able to forgive. Like, I was literally driving home, and it seems like, you know, right-wing talk radio is really starting to embrace this really extreme evangelical mindset and incorporating it into it. Because I always listen to right-wing talk radio when I'm in my car. My daughter hates it, but I like to know the mind of my enemy. I'm a lefty, and they were talking about how, you know, sin is everywhere, and the cop that kneeled on George Floyd's neck, he was a victim to sin, and they were literally calling sin a virus, like it's a pandemic. And then the protesters, well, the peaceful protesters, they're with God, but the moment you start looting, that's where the sin comes in, and sin is everywhere, sin is everywhere, sin is everywhere. And it's just like, you're looking for shit that's really just normal human activity, and trying to give some supernatural spin to it. It's not sin, it's frustration. You know, people are looting. A lot of those looters are just taking advantage of a situation. A lot of them are from out of town, coming to these places, taking advantage of a situation. But a lot of it's just from plain human frustration after decades and decades of not getting anything done. And it's not sin. It's not like the devil is taking over these people and causing them to do these things. It's years of oppression. It's years of frustration of not being heard, which is a very natural human thing. I think too often, a lot of Christians, and you'd probably agree, are grasping at straws, trying to prove a God when they're just proving humanity.
Oh, I totally think that's true. I totally think they're doing it all the time. When they start ignoring parts of the text to agree with what they think the text says, then it's obvious to me they're being biased. Okay? Well, once you show me your bias about a topic, I'm no longer willing to take your word on that topic. You know? On any other topic, sure, teach me about math. That's great. But once you show me your religious bias, I don't want more information about that from you.
Yeah, yeah, and we all have biases. I'm really trying to get over biases I have, especially when it comes to like talking to different political ideologies, not just far right wing extremism, but like libertarianism. I've always just, oh, you're a libertarian, you're crazy, and that's a bias that I have. And it stops me from actually having a decent conversation with that person to figure out, oh, why are you a libertarian? What does that entail? What do you believe? What makes you believe that? And can we find some kind of common ground here? And a lot of times liberals and libertarians can find common ground, but because we're not willing to go there, we're not willing to see past the differences, we're not going to ever see the similarities.
See, and that's where our natural... Of course you think you're right. You would change your mind if you thought you were wrong.
Exactly.
Of course. So when someone says, oh, I believe the following, or I think the following is true before a statement, other than in a formal debate, I think, why the hell did you just say that? You did not need to say that's everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I agree, and I think that we're kind of on the same page on this part of it anyway, and that, when I'm talking about personal experience, sometimes I'm going to get a little disrespectful, especially like, I'm going to probably be a lot more disrespectful in an edited video as opposed to a conversation with you, or even a conversation with a Christian that I don't like Matt Powell. I can find plenty of stuff with Matt and the things that Matt says for me to get angry at, outside of some, personal revelations that he's had that I just might not believe in or agree with. So it's going to be quite different, like if I'm on my own, like I was in that Nate and Sutton stream, to where I'm really trying to go out of my way to be a little funny and to make light of it. That's going to cause a bit of disrespect, and it's not going to show truly how I feel about personal experience, because I think as an atheist, I do grant more room for personal experience than a lot of other atheists do. A lot of other atheists will just straight up tell you it doesn't mean shit, shouldn't even be discussed. And I'll let you talk about it, but at the same time, in a debate, it's not going to score any points in a debate, or it's not going to go any ways towards convincing me of your ultimate point. For that, I need empirical data. And I think a lot of atheists are like that. And even a lot of Christians, I think you yourself, you don't base what you believe on just because you had these revelations. You studied the Bible, you interpreted it, and you came to your conclusions. It took measured thought, I believe, I would say. So I think that's my issue with it, is like when it came to that stream and what Nate and Sutton were saying, is that they were trying to say that all Christians should probably practice this because this is a two-way conversation with God, when in fact, in reality, you were starting a meditation process and then triggering thoughts in your brain that caused results. Because you took that action, you had results from that action. And that is like a totally different thing. To me, that's not even personal experience. It's just it's a wad of bullshit crumpled up and thrown at me.
Yeah, if you want to impress me, I want you to say something that you can't say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like speaking in tongues. I've always said this, like, if that actually ever happened. Yeah, if it ever happens, and not the baby language that people pretend to speak in, but actually, like, you're an American, you've never spoken French before, and you can understand this Frenchman perfectly, and then speak to him to where he understands you perfectly. Well, then I might have to change my views on speaking in tongues. Unfortunately, we just don't never see that happen.
I know that what I'm about to say is a personal experience recollection. And because of that, it's a story that I experienced from someone else, but you're now getting it third hand. I know of a guy, he was going to a church, and they were always talking about speaking in tongues. They tried to teach him to fake it, and he thought, well, you guys are just faking it. I'm not going to fake it. So he prayed about it a lot, and he was really he was serious about wanting to speak in tongues. But his wife had died years before. And when he and his wife were much younger, they had kind of like adopted this neighborhood girl, this little tiny girl who grew up since, and she was from a Jewish family, and she was now going to, like, I don't know what they call that, Jew school. She was like learning ancient Hebrew and stuff. I don't know what they call that. But anyway, she was studying all these ancient things about her people. Sure. So she used to call the old man on a pretty regular basis and just check in with him. And she calls this one time, and according to him, the phone cut out midway conversation, and then it came right back on. And then he tried to pick up the conversation where the phone cut off. And then she stopped him and said, "What the hell did you just say?" Well, she didn't say hell. She said, "What did you just say?" He said, "I didn't say anything. The phone cut out." She goes, No. What did you say?" He goes, "Well, I was talking about the car and how it broke down last week." She goes, No, after that. He goes, "I didn't say anything after that." And then she says, "You just spoke perfect Middle Hebrew, a language he doesn't know." So that convinced him, personally, it was compelling to him. I know the guy, you don't know the guy. You know, seeing his face as he told the story, I didn't think he was lying about it, that he really believed it. Now, if it actually happened, that's another question. But he thoroughly believed that happened.
Yeah, I would say maybe it's possible he picked something up. If she was studying it, maybe he heard her say things that his brain picked up, and he relayed that. But again, like I would think that if you were speaking in tongues, you would be conscious of it. So like if he doesn't remember saying it and she heard it, I don't know. I would call into question the connection, honestly. But that's just me, and I'm a natural skeptic, and I would need to see it happen probably myself to ever honestly believe it. Because you know the guy, and you know him to be honest.
It's different.
But I also think that even the most honest people lie. And especially I think when it comes to like religious beliefs, I think people are really willing to fool themselves to validate those religious beliefs. And I think that the brain is more than willing to fool us. And we see that on a regular, especially if you look at, police investigations, investigating crime scenes, what witnesses see compared to what the reality is. I think that we have very empirical proof that our brains are playing tricks on us all the time. So I think that's what's hard about those conversations. And I think that atheists need to try to be better about granting that ground and saying, hey, you're not convincing me here with it, but I'm not going to take away from your experience. I would rather talk about this set of data or that set of data. But if atheists are going out of their way to just say, hey, what you are experiencing, that didn't fucking happen. Well, how do you know it didn't happen? You weren't there. So I really try to avoid that situation, but I will try to provide rationalities sometimes for things that I hear like that. And like for a daughter to be studying ancient Hebrew, I'm sure John likes to call me while I'm streaming. Say hello to the audience, John.
I did it again.
Yeah, I was just like, John loves to call me while I'm streaming.
Fuck, I didn't get no notification. What the hell, man?
It's YouTube. But yeah, we've got about 40 minutes, so you can call me after that if you want.
All right, brother.
All right, man.
Later.
So yeah, I lost track there, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like it's very possible that he did pick up something, and while I think that it would be highly unlikely that he would say it perfectly, so, but at the same time, I think it's possible that he picked up something and said something maybe without even realizing what he was doing or what he was saying. Yeah,
of course, that's always possible. But I'm talking about
and so is God. God is a possibility as well. Like that could have been God. That could have been speaking in tongues. I don't know. I don't have any evidence against it. I just don't have any evidence for it.
In keeping with the text, whenever someone was speaking not of themselves, they were in some kind of trance-like or possessed state, and that's consistent within the text. So.
Well, yeah, and I think that, we have plenty of...
I'm not sure you'd remember that.
Yeah, well, I think that you probably wouldn't, and it definitely wouldn't be like some made-up language. I think that that's the biggest piece of evidence that we can have when it comes to speaking in tongues is, for one, none of the languages that these people speak are the same. So this person says things differently than that person. There's never any consistency to it. But outside of that, it's they do remember it, and they're consciously trying to say it. And I think that you're right, that the Bible clearly says it would be in a state that it would at least be foggy in your memory and you wouldn't have a clear recollection of it. But at the same time, there's such a plethora of possibilities. I know I got in trouble with Matt Powell when he would come and give me his absolutes, and I would toss out all of these possibilities. Like your idea that humans came from the stars and populated this planet. That's an idea that's out there. Some French scientists have put out that theory, and I think it's starting to carry a little more weight, but at the same time not, because it's on the fringe. But at the same time, like, I've studied that stuff. So when Matt's giving out possibilities, that's one of the possibilities I put out. And then, him being the type of Christian he is, he had to edit it to make it look like, well, that's what Nakasuchi believes. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that shit. And he even had Steven Anderson talking about me and my Star Wars ideology. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I was just tossing out a possibility that I read in a paper probably 15 years ago.
Doesn't he also misquote Richard Dawkins when interviewed for Expelled?
Yeah.
He also misquotes that, doesn't he?
All the time.
Yeah. Well, that's just disingenuous in my view.
Well, yeah, and that's just how they are. And good news is, Steven Anderson just got 2 strikes on his channel 3 days ago. So he's not really he took off all of his like hateful shit from his channel, and he's putting that on his like church channel now. But I mean, Steven Anderson could be losing his main channel soon. I take that as a positive. I'm not for cancel culture, but I will probably have a bit of a celebration if his channel gets taken down.
Roger that. All right, well, brother, I don't know how long you want to go. Do you want to take some audience participation? I'm always up for that.
Yeah, we have. Let me see. Yeah, the rest of it. I think we pretty much covered throughout the stream. So yeah, we can get out of there. So yeah, if there's any questions from the audience for John or for some of the things that I've said. Or not John. I'm reading John.
You can call me John. I like that name. That's
John
cool
Peterson
name.
Is in the chat now, so I'm seeing his name there, and I'm calling you John. But if you have any questions for Richard or even questions for me, feel free to put them up there. We got about a half an hour. This was a really good conversation, and as I knew would probably happen, when we actually start talking, we don't really disagree. Like, we disagree on our beliefs, but It's not going to be some oh, you're wrong, Naka. No, you're going to understand my position, and I understand your position probably a little more than some of the atheists in the audience might like. But I try to go out of my way to do that because, like I said, I don't find you harmful at all, and I'm not gonna diss on you for believing the way you believe when I really don't have any evidence against it outside of the fact that I don't have evidence for it.
Right, and I've always found you to be honest, and that's all I ever hope for. Is for someone to just be honest about who they are and what they think and feel.
Well, yeah, and that's what I love most about these conversations is because I could never have these conversations with the people in my quote-unquote real life. Like, none of the Christians around me ever wanted to have these conversations with me. And I find that to be really sad, honestly. Like if you believe in this creator being to the point that you're going to base your entire life off of him, you should not be afraid to have your faith questioned. You should be more than willing to defend your faith. And yet, as me and John find out constantly trying to book Christians for this show, none of them really want to. None of them are really. They're quick to be in the side chat talking shit, Smoky Saint, but not quick to come on the show and really have a conversation about their faith because they don't want to have it challenged.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And I think that's disingenuous from within themselves. Okay, just how biased are you if you never challenge any of your views?
Exactly. Like, I try to challenge my views all the time. And
right.
I went from being a very staunch, what I call dark anti-theist, all religion is evil and needs to be eradicated off the planet, to listening to cooler voices, researching, doing a lot of internal realizations about why I would come to such a conclusion. And it's basically because every Christian I've known in life has treated me like shit the moment they found out that I didn't believe in the same things that they did, and you have to be able to make yourself better. And I think too often on both sides, not just Christians, that we're not willing to do that. We get stuck in our rut of being right instead of being open to being wrong.
If you would, Knock, could you bring up the Jake 4D comment, and we'll speak about that. And before that, I'd like to say to John Peterson, I think the world is already a beautiful place and people like you. I really mean that, John.
Well, you are probably one of the Christians I love talking to the most. I don't find anything harmful in any of the things you say, and you're jovial, and you have the best beard on the internet. So.
I don't know. That's contestable. I've seen Doorknob Head's beard. I
haven't seen his yet, but I've heard good things.
It definitely gets an honorable mention at least. Yes, Jake 4D, understanding that the text being prophetic and not historically accurate, understanding that it's talking about things that people will actually physically see with their normal unaided eyeballs, so that it can be testimony to people who don't already think that it's true. After all, the people who think it's true don't need confirmation. That would be silly. The prophecy is in the story of Jericho. You can just look up for a singular word. There's only one place in the Bible it even appears. It's Dagon, capital D-A-G-O-N. Now that's a constellation, and it's named after a retired god, or possibly it was a constellation before it was a god. I'm a little bit fuzzy. History's a little bit fuzzy on that point. Today it's called Draco. But because of the lazy W around the North Star that is the body of Dagon, then Poseidon, then Draco the dragon, the body part always was the body, as far as I can find. The head and hands are always the head and hands, and that's never changed, though the name changed. And the prophecy is that when heaven is close to arriving to the earth, we would lose our ability to see those three particular stars that are right now what we would call the head and hands of Draco, or head and front claws, I guess, of Draco the dragon. So that's written in a time where they called it Dagon, okay, which is the ancient god of the oceans, and then of course that's Poseidon, etc. But anyway, so in order that there is something that blocked our view of those three particular stars, first of all, it has to be recognizable long enough for us to talk about it, and for us to be able to talk about it like actually seeing it with our actual eyes, without Hubble. And it has to be coming from right beside North, and it has to be coming close to or piercing our solar system for it to have the appearance of getting large enough to block our view. So I started looking for that. I read that story in, I think, mid to late 2012. And I started relating that story to other people, having read it in the text. And I think probably early 2013, I'd spoken to, I don't know, a handful of people about it. I don't know how many. I didn't take notes. And then I was already looking for something to block our view of those three stars. Now, personally, my opinion was it was going to be heaven itself. Turns out I was wrong. But in 2017, NASA confirmed what an amateur astronomer had found, which was, it's now called Comet C2, C stands for Comet, C2017, that's the year it was found, K2, that's Kilo, the number 2, and the telescope it was confirmed with which was Pan-STARRS, and that has 2 R's in it, P-A-N-S-T-A-R-R-S. Now that's a NASA thing. It's confirmed. You can see 3-dimensional charts for it. It is coming in. It will be blocking those 3 stars right beside North that are almost a perfect triangle, right beside the North Star Polaris, from our view and for a length of time. You could probably find it just by typing in record-breaking comet. Because although it's as far away right now as, I haven't looked in a little minute, it's further away than Jupiter, and its coma, or its outgassing discharge, in side-by-side comparison, is as big as Jupiter already. Okay? So it's freaking huge, and it's really far away, but it's already huge.
Yeah, and we talked about that before, and I've always meant to kind of look into it, and I never did. So I'm going to try to remember to do that tomorrow, or maybe even after the stream today. We do have some more questions. This one's easy. This is from Jake 4D as well. Hi, how are you? I hope you are well. Same for Richard. I am doing really, really good. I feel a lot better. I feel fresh. I feel like I'm ready to get back into the work, that I've found what I want to be doing again. And I think I found that raging atheist voice again. I just got to get the word out there that the channel's back to the way that it used to be. And hopefully a lot of the older viewers that I pushed away in a lot of my anti-theism or my anti-theism talks that I had back in the day, hopefully that they will come back. I want to be accepting of atheism again. I want to be accepting of worldviews again. But at the same time, I want to be highly critical as I used to be, and not worry about offending people. And if I do offend people, then I want them to come on like Richard is doing. He had disagreements with things that I said, and we were able to talk out those disagreements and say, hey, I believe this, you believe that. That's fine. That's what humans do.
Okay, so guys, I had my monitor screen going, and I'm signed into the side chat. And I put the link there. That's the link to the 3-dimensional image that you can actually rotate and look at from different angles and see exactly what I'm talking about. That's K2 Pan-STARRS. That's C2017 right there.
And I am not seeing that, Richard, in the side chat at all.
Okay, well, maybe it's not allowing me in the side chat. So I'll tell you what, let me put it in the private, and then you can do that, because it's not allowing me.
StreamYard's been really, really stupid. I know, Geo Sam, question for Richard, toast or English muffins?
English muffins? Is that even a question?
I would agree.
He's hilarious.
I much prefer English muffins. Much prefer English muffins.
So that's in the private chat there. That's the best I can do to share it.
All right, let me see.
If you want to copy and paste that, I'm sure it'll allow you to put it up.
All right, it is in the side chat now. So that link right there is what
Thank you.
Richard is referencing. And these conversations are always some of my favorites. Again, with Richard, you're an open book like I am. You're not afraid to. You understand that most Christians are going to not agree with you. In fact, you were just telling me a story before we started streaming that Praise kicked you out of his stream for hearsay.
Yeah, I got forever kicked. I'm so proud of my work.
I'm like, Praise was coming so far too. He stopped talking about like shooting people.
I'd like to call him out right now, because every time he and I had an actual conversation, I would use biblical references, excluding none of them, make my point. He would agree with me, and then when other people came on, he'd talk crap about it.
Yeah, and that's not cool, Praise. Come on, Praise, you're better than that.
No, he's not. He's no better than that.
Probably not.
No.
And that is another problem within at least the YouTube Christianity that I've come across, is they can have completely different doctrines, completely different beliefs, but they're going to take the side of the Christian over the side of the atheist, even if they agree with the atheist. Like I see SJ do it a lot. Like SJ, there's not a whole lot to agree between SJ and Godless Girl, and yet because they're on the same team, they agree. And it's like, I find that completely disingenuous, and I'm not speaking ill of either one of them. I just find it to be disingenuous.
To answer John Peterson, he asks, boxers or briefs? John, you prefer boxers.
I say commando, yo, commando. Oh no, I do wear.
That wasn't
underwear.
one of the options. You can't pick that one.
And I don't even do it. I was just saying it to be funny. Like I would be afraid. You know, I watched something about Mary, and I would be afraid of what happened to Ben Stiller when he was going to the prom in the bathroom, when he zipped up. If anybody remembers what I'm talking about,
Ooh.
that scene has
Beans or Franks or both.
yeah, that scene ruined me. It ruined me.
Dude, I did that when I was a kid. When I was like, I think 13 or 14. Just going commando peeing in the woods. Oh,
Yeah.
no, you will be careful from that point forward
Yeah.
in your life.
Yeah, I would never want to experience that. That would be horrible.
Oh, and the part where he unzips past that trapping, that's not true. You can't unzip past it. You have to break the zipper. You have to break the teeth. Because you cannot undo it.
Yeah, I'm like squinching up my body just thinking. Yeah, that hurts. That hurts. But yeah, no, I want to thank you, Richard, for coming on.
Thank you.
Talking out these disagreements. And they're not really disagreements. Like I said, like usually when I'm on my own and I'm doing response content, I'm really trying to find that sense of humor again, because that's what people have really missed the most over the last 8 months is I think that old sense of humor that I used to bring to my videos, and I just got so socially conscious, and not just me, but the people around me, that I stopped doing that. And I was worried about offending people, and I'm really trying to get out of that. So sometimes I'm going to say things that even my people that I'm really friendly with are going to have disagreements with. And I always want to provide a place to hash those disagreements out, defend my position, but at the same time, give you a chance to tell me what you found wrong with it.
I'll give that an amen. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I gotta be me.
Yeah.
Yeah, knock us back, guys. Start shilling him back out again. Let's build this channel back up to where it belongs to be by now.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I think that we're gonna make great strides, and I do have some pretty good conversations lined up. I have quite a few people saying that they're gonna come and talk to me, and we'll see if Smokey Saint finds his balls and actually emails me instead of just being in the side chat. And I thought that his debate was on Modern Day Debate tonight at 6, but that's tomorrow night at 6. So if you guys want to come and troll Smokey Saint with me, put it on him. I'm going to turn it around. Like, he's been coming into my side chats trolling me, so I'm going to go to Modern Day Debate and troll the fuck out of him tomorrow. And if you guys want to see it, make sure to tune in to Modern Day Debate tomorrow at 6.
Jake 4D asked one more question. And this is a little bit longer than you probably think the answer should be. The 24 elders are enjoying the promises made specifically to the Christ. The Bible also says there'll be one Christ to the earth. That means there have been 24 earths. There are only 4 gospels out of 24 listed in the Bible, which should all generally agree and be different in minor details, because human nature means that two people wouldn't say exactly the same thing in exactly the same situation. It just wouldn't even make sense if they did. I would say that it was scripted, and the job of Christ is a scripted part, and he has to say certain things in a certain order if all 4 of the Gospels totally agreed with each other.
I know I was watching a Godless Engineer video recently, and he made some really good points about how the Old Testament does prophecy the Messiah, and it prophesies the Messiah in a way that Messiah would be, if not crucified, it doesn't say crucified, but subjugated to pressures and to life-altering events. And so GE's point was that the New Testament writers were really trying to fulfill those prophecies as they were writing the New Testament. Now, I know that you, and we're going to have another conversation about this, you don't believe that has happened yet. Like, you think it's prophetic and that it's going to happen in end of days, I believe. So correct me if I'm like getting your position wrong.
No, that's a logical necessity in the description of the 2 witnesses of end times being a description of the life of Christ by definition. Christ hasn't happened on this earth yet.
So yeah, so when it comes to like the mythicism of Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, we actually agree. But to where I think that the New Testament is bullshit, you think that the New Testament is prophetic, and really,
Sure.
there's really no way that either one of us can prove our points. You actually have a better chance of it if it happens, especially in our lifetime.
Exactly. You nailed it, brother. That's it. You need the proof you need, and that's totally reasonable.
Yeah, and I've always tried to maintain that. Like, I became an atheist for several reasons. What happened in prison, what happened with the Christians around me, what happened in personal experience, not having them. But I've always maintained, like, if I had undeniable proof, like, and I've always said, like, the best example of that would be Jesus coming down on a cloud, and holy shit, Revelations was right. Then, because really, that's the only way that it's going to be proved to me. I'm already skeptical of what the New Testament says. So I would need to see some of these prophecies really being fulfilled. And I'm sorry, Jesus is Lord. Tyre wasn't one of them. Tyre, however you say it, that wasn't one of them.
Oh my gosh. Oh jeez.
But we are going to get out of here. I want to thank you, Richard, for coming on.
Thank you so much for letting me on again, Knock. Of course, every time. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you on. And I actually like having you on better on these one-on-ones than in rooms, because in rooms it's really hard to flesh out ideas, and so a lot of times I think that the normal Christians get the airway as opposed to your views, because it's a double-edged sword. Not only do the atheists not believe you, but the Christians think that you're heretical. So, so in the
True
open
story.
room situations, we don't really have a chance to flesh out your ideas, to where in these one-on-ones we really do. And
Well, I
one
want to
thing-
say thanks
yeah.
to everyone who participated from the side chat and posed some interesting questions. Thank you again for that.
And before we go, show your channel, guys. I did not get the link in the description before the stream, but I will immediately as the stream is over. Richard has great conversations on his channel. You don't have to subscribe to his beliefs to enjoy the conversations he's having over there. Painfully undersubscribed. So go over there, check out some of his conversations.
Oh, that's sweet.
And
Thanks.
I mean, you just had a really good conversation with Dr. Robert Price that a lot of people probably haven't seen because they're not there. So go subscribe to Richard, because you're missing out.
Yeah, Robert Price is if you don't know who Robert Price is, he's actually recognized as in the top of his field worldwide. He is, famous. He is well qualified to talk about what he speaks about, and he and I had a great time talking, and we're going to do it again sometime soon as his schedule allows it. So yeah, we just recently did that, but I'm always looking for that kind of good, strong, intelligent, and challenging conversations on Demolished Doctrine, Richard Madsen. If you type in all that, you'll get it very easily. That's the actual name of the YouTube channel.
Yep, and thanks again, Richard. I do have a small outro for my patrons. Patrons out there, be looking forward to just Patreon content on Patreon soon. I'm going to be putting up my office transformation. I just got to edit that down so you guys can see all the fun toys that I'm working with now. Should be a good thing for the patrons, and I'm going to really be trying to get edited videos back on a Patreon before they hit YouTube. Again, I have a pretty... The first half of the video is serious, but the second half is old Nakasuchi, and I'm talking about what girls are afraid to ask guys, according to Paul and Morgan. It's going to be great. You guys will enjoy it. But yes, thank you, patrons. We are going to get out of here. As always, be the conversation. And as always, I'm not ready for it. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. Everybody that was in the chat, and enjoy the rest of your Father's Day. Peace out.